The most important people to take care of, first of all, are your own people.
That's Scott Monge, founder and CEO of Monge Associates.
Take care of your people, and you'll have happy people. And then in turn, with their interactions with the clients, they will have a happier, better experience.
I'm Michael Mogill, founder and CEO of Crisp, the nation's #1 law firm growth company. I've built my business through practice, not theory. Crisp started with just $500 to my name and has grown to over 8 figures in revenue over the last few years, earning a spot on the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Our approach has been to take everything we've learned about generating massive growth within our own organization and help the country's most ambitious and committed law firm owners do the same for theirs. In each episode of this podcast, I sit down with innovative market leaders from the legal industry and beyond to learn from those who thrive in the face of adversity, challenge the status quo, and define what it means to be a true game changer. I sat down with Scott Monge to discuss how to lead a world-class team with a service-oriented culture, how to differentiate your firm in even the most competitive markets, and why hard work and consistency are the real magic bullets.
If you're not growing, if you're not expanding, if you're not investing in tomorrow, then you're not moving forward because someone else is doing those things.
That's coming up on the Game Changing Attorney podcast. Before we begin today's episode, I want to remind you that we aren't beholden to any sponsors or run any ads on this podcast. This allows us to present all of our episodes raw and unfiltered. I'm not going to push any made-to-order meal services on you or try to save you any money on your car insurance. That being said, I have one small request. If you receive any value from this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. Pay the fee so we can keep this podcast free. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Michael.
So for the people listening, if you live in Atlanta, I don't know if there's a single human being that has not seen some form of marketing or advertising that you've done. I mean, I was mentioning even before we started recording, I'm dropping my daughter off this morning. I'm seeing billboards. I'm seeing you on buses. Do you know offhand just like how many billboards, buses like that you have, like just your face or the firm brand on?
Boy, that's a great question. I don't know exactly, but the joke on marketing is half my marketing works and half of it doesn't. I just don't know which half is half.
Have you seen, and again, I know you said nothing was off limits, so I'm just going to dive in right away. Roughly how much are you investing a month right now on marketing?
Probably too much. The focus that we have on marketing is really in terms of not so much how much we spend, but what's our cost come out to be per case. So that's something that we're very conscious of in terms of what are we spending? Are we spending wisely? What's working? What's not? And just making sure we're not squandering any resources.
We'll come back to the marketing, but just roughly over $1 million a month?
Over.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense. When you first launched the firm, what was the marketing investment then? Because I imagine this has steadily increased over the years.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's going back quite a ways. And I think you start where you are for what you have. Really in terms of when I started with nothing. And so at that point, it's really just, you never know where your next case or next client is going to come from. It can come from anyone, or anywhere. In terms of that, there was just really just a lot of just, very hands-on marketing and networking and each step, and then that step leads to another step. And then that step leads to something else, which at the time was probably Yellow Pages. And then that step leads to television. And that step leads to digital. And then that step leads to something else. And, some of the conversations that I have, Michael, with marketing, with some of our partners, I will say, this conversation took me 25 years to get to this point to be able to have this conversation. In terms of the barriers to marketing, there's they kind of work both ways. It takes a long time to get there, but also once you get past a barrier, it also offers a certain level of perhaps security just because it takes so long to build up.
Yeah, and it's building that brand. It's interesting in speaking with various firm owners and market leaders from across the country. Many of them have some sort of like catalyst moment that they were building up to, and whether it was a certain case, they hit a big case and they reinvested into the firm. Do you have a moment like that where just things really started to take off?
With me, I would say it's been more of a process. So in terms of my story, it started, a long time ago. I started work at a very young age, at about 8 or 10, recycling aluminum cans. After that, was a paper boy. After that, landscaping, mowing yards. After that, fast food, and going on. And looking back, all of these things, the work ethic that you have, and especially getting used to doing things that you may not feel like doing them, but you plow forward, you do them anyway, and you kind of just get used to that. And that same work ethic are things that I use to apply to what I do today. Everything's a lesson. And you look back and in terms of the most challenging experiences that you've had, and in hindsight, there's something of value that you can apply moving forward. For me, it was more of a process coming from a background of scarcity. I was always thinking about tomorrow. I was always had a greater security, of putting it that way, of surrounding myself with as many clients, as many cases as I could. And so that was always my desire, Michael, was what can I do as far as finding things that work? There's so many things that don't work. And just like Thomas Edison has his quote of I know 5,000 ways not to invent a light bulb. I know 5,000 marketing things that don't work. And so it makes you appreciate it when you find something that does work. And there's no silver bullet. It takes, some of a lot of different things, and it takes some luck, and everybody has good luck and bad luck. But for me, it's been more of a journey along the way, and just not taking anything for granted, not being satisfied with whatever happened yesterday, always trying to do whatever I can to build for tomorrow.
How long has the firm been in existence today?
Since 1993.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So to have that type of longevity, just simply even existing, let alone growing, right? What's been the biggest challenge over the years?
I would put the challenges into two categories. The first challenge is really just building your business, getting it rolling, and finding things that are going to provide a sufficient stream of work to keep you and everyone busy. That's frequently how I view my role. My job is to keep everyone in my organization busy. That's one of the challenges. And then the other challenges is just making sure that you have the right people. And the way I describe that is I always look for two qualities, and that is positivity and performance. So in terms of looking if someone's going to be a good fit in our team, when I say positivity, I'm looking for people that are basically going to be the nicest people on the planet that I can find, and then also just happen to be high performers.
I know a lot of firms these days say they're focusing on customer service, but you guys, you take it to another level. Where did that come from, that inspiration, and why is that such an important focus of the firm?
One of the key things is in terms of, whatever a person's practice model is, when you do it, the only way to get ahead is to distinguish yourself and think, what can I do that's different? And a great way to do that in terms of our organization or the practice of law or any business, I think, is to go through and look at the friction points and say, okay, what are the friction points in the client experience? What can we do to do things better or different? So for example, some of the things that we do, so the person's going to hear something dramatically different. It's going to be, how can I make you smile? How can I make things better? In terms of just setting that positive tone from the very first call. If someone's coming into the office, we're going to have a welcome monitor. It's going to have their name on it. And it's going to go through and make them feel welcome, generate those positive vibes before they ever have a meeting with anyone. Other things that we can do as far as welcoming them, they're going to get a personalized welcome video. It's going to have their name on it. It's going to let them know that we're working on their case, and continuing that through the process. In the last year, we've sent 12,000 gratitude books. These are books that are personalized in the names of our clients to let them know that they are valued, appreciated, important. And it's a collection of positive quotes. And that's also the message for members of our team, is that you are valued, appreciated, important. And I don't think that can ever be said enough. I know I don't say it enough. And, so those are some of our core values that would be important to us.
And I know we'll talk about brand and, and marketing throughout this, but like what you just mentioned, even those gratitude books, it's like, how do you measure that, right? Like, how do you measure a return on that? And obviously you could say, well, that's not necessarily our goal when we send those out. But I think making those decisions, there's still an investment there, right? So I imagine that you're probably making a lot of investments like that you can't directly measure.
Yeah, that's exactly true. But in terms of the way I measure that is Am I making a connection with this person? What am I doing to stand out that's different from someone else? In that example that I gave, every book also includes some things about my personal journey and my story, and message to the recipient that, hey, I would love to hear from you. Michael, here's my cell. Text or call me. Let me know what you think of this gift. I'd love to hear from you. It all begins with a conversation. And so those are some of the things that we do.
And Scott, speaking of your story, I guess to take a step back, just growing up in Illinois, and from what I read, you did not come from a family of lawyers. What influenced your decision to become an attorney?
I came from a family of six. I was the oldest of four children. In terms of making that decision, it was really challenging. My dad managed a car wash. My mom was busy raising four kids. And I didn't have any lawyers in my family, so I didn't really know what a lawyer is supposed to be doing or what a lawyer does. And so what led me in that direction was I just naturally was attracted to courses of study that kind of led into that law direction. So that was basically what led me in that direction. But even then, it was challenging because growing up in Illinois, we're having this conversation in Georgia. I had not studied anything in Georgia. And so I just graduated, packed all my earthly belongings in the back of my 1984 Chevy Chevette subcompact vehicle, drove on down here, and basically just put my shingle out. One of the ways that I see life in terms of my life view, Michael, is I see a lot of the disadvantages as really advantages in the end. And a lot of the advantages can sometimes be disadvantages if not used properly. But anyway, like I said, I came down here not having studied law, not having really knowing everything, just a perfect example of someone that was starting from ground zero, which was exactly the way I wanted to be, because I thought there's no better time to fail. I joke and say, if I'd lost everything I owned, I'd only be out about $15 at the time. I had the advantage that there was no order of difficulty because it was all difficult. So I just did every kind of law there was. I tried my first jury trial 6 months after being sworn in, and just throwing myself into it, and then narrowing the practice to personal injury over time. And, and just surrounding myself with a lot of people that were really very positive influences and helped me grow, become a better person, and grow into the person that I am today.
So when you did hang up your shingle, in the early days, I'm curious as to what day one was like. When people talk about the fact that look, I started from nothing, what was that like? Just what were those early days like? What did the day-to-day look like?
So day one looked like this. It looked like signing a 12-month office lease, having no clients. And, people were saying, boy, congratulations, that's great. And I was like, okay, well, all right. Well, I guess we better get to work in terms of, clients and everything else. And, it was all new. It was all a great lesson. You just get used to it after a while. You get used to it. Richard Branson tells this story of when he would have his wife, he'd be like, hey, honey, go ahead, sign this paper. And she'd be like, what is this? What am I signing? Oh, it just means if this venture doesn't work out, we lose the house and everything we own. And so, after a while, just like you build up your muscles at the gym, you build up your risk tolerance and you get kind of used to it.
And speaking of that, when you look back, it's like in 93, there was a great deal of legal advertising in terms of the yellow pages and so on, but most law firms across America did not necessarily view advertising necessarily respectfully, and then they didn't necessarily see it as a way to grow their firms, or that lawyers that did advertise, many of them saw them as an abomination to the legal profession. What essentially influenced you to say, hey, this is the direction I need to go to be able to build up this practice?
You're right. That was the view. With law, it was very different than the other professions. It was not legal to advertise until 1976. As you pointed out, for many, many years after that, it was viewed as taboo. And so, as a result, the competition that you saw in most other fields really did not exist in law. And, things have changed a lot over time. And one of the things that has changed is it seems like in the earlier days there was kind of that chasm. But in terms of the present law firm, any good law firm or any good business engages in marketing. And it just seems like there's been more and more of a trend as far as just making sure that you're delivering a full service to the client. Full service meaning in the area of law that you're handling that case to start to finish, or otherwise, making the choices that are going to be in the best interest of the client.
What do you think made you different? I mean, obviously it had to be something, right? Because if you look at it, most lawyers were not advertising, and then you made the decision to really push in and do those things. But at a time where I imagine the firm wasn't very big, there wasn't a whole lot of cases coming in. I mean, was it just really you had no choice, or was it something else?
We're all the sum of the energy of the people we surround ourselves with, right? And so, when I look back in terms of things that point me in that direction, I just have had so many people that have been positive influences. I mean, literally, there's very few things in this world that I do well, Michael. So, in terms of, whatever you see that we're talking about that may have happened with my organization, it's a result of a whole lot of people working really, really hard.
I'll tell you, the people with the most humility, I find, tend to be the most successful. I still have a difficult time understanding how someone achieves a tremendous amount of success and has ego at the end, because it's such a tumultuous journey, right? Whatever you may think of yourself, that will probably get beaten out of you over the years, right? You'll have enough just bad days and things not go your way to the point where you're humbled continuously. And it's amazing the people you've been able to surround yourself with. So fast forwarding to today, what's the composition of the firm look like in terms of like team size, head count, number of attorneys?
So the team is approximately 200 members with about 30 lawyers. In terms of the composition, it's changed dramatically. When you look back at the early days, in terms of practices, they were very limited by geography in terms of the scope of practice being, okay, maybe we'll go through and we'll handle clients in this county or this adjacent county. And then after that, that spread to statewide. And then after that, it spreads to other areas. And then after that, it becomes, we'll go wherever the client is. And it's much the same with team members. When you're looking to source the best talent on your team, why limit yourself to your hometown? One of the silver linings of the pandemic was just that it forced innovation. As you pointed out, it forced tremendous innovation in a very short amount of time. As a result of that, it forced us to think in new ways of, looking for talent, beyond our immediate convenient geography, and just finding talent, that was available, and integrating that into our organization and moving forward with that.
What would you say are some of the main differentiators of the firm today? Because, I mean, you're in a arguably very competitive market. I mean, in Atlanta, I mean, there's a ton of competition. There's a lot of big advertisers and a lot of firms that are run really well. I mean, I think gone are the days where your competition is just essentially just spending a lot of money. I mean, now that's, you add in great operators, people who have great business operations, they're leveraging technology. It becomes more and more difficult to compete. So how does the firm stand out today?
I would say it stands out in two ways. In terms of where we spend our resources, it really comes down to two things, and that's marketing and that's our people. In terms of marketing, there's two ways to grow a practice, and that's you expand your geography or you expand what you do in terms of adding other practice areas. In terms of our geography, that would be one distinguisher as far as that has helped us grow. And, with the internet, that's just opened up a whole new world of exciting possibilities. So that, and also too, it's when we're looking at ways of doing things, we're always looking at, how can we say or do something that's different? And everybody answers that question their own way, but you won't typically hear any familiar slogans such as free consultation or things like that with us. We'll offer those things, but we'll say it in a way that's different. Because if we're saying the same thing that everybody else is saying, then that just means that we have to spend more than anybody else to get to the top of that heap. And so the question is more, what can we do that's different? What can we do that is client-centered? What does the client want? And how can we best tailor our message to appeal to that particular client? And then also too, there's three potential clients. There's the past clients that we've already represented and just maintaining contact with them. And then there's the current clients where, as far as doing the best job we can, so they'll tell their family and their friends. And then there's the future clients that we haven't met. And, it's easy to focus a lot of attention on those future clients that we haven't met. But it's like, why would you not already look at those that you've already had contact with, that already have familiarity with your organization?
I was reading, there's something interesting you do in the first 30 days for your clients. I guess a guarantee, if you will, if you could speak to that.
Oh, yes. So there's a couple things that we do that involve that. One is more of a customer service guarantee. They basically just said, listen, we're so confident that you'll be pleased with your experience. If there's anything that if you're not 100% satisfied in the first 30 days, you can take your file and we won't charge you any fees or costs whatsoever. Another one that we'll do is if a client comes to us with a settlement offer, we'll offer them a guarantee that we will beat that settlement offer with a higher amount, or we won't charge them anything.
And I imagine like when people think about a guarantee like that, they're apprehensive, but you go all in and do those things as differentiators. Like if you look back over the years, what have been some of the mistakes, like or perhaps learning lessons that, whether it was marketing or even some other area of the practice that you kind of reflect on that, it just essentially were painful at the time, but were great learning lessons?
Yeah, well, that's a great question because all the great lessons tend to come from the failures. That is what I see as the real rocket fuel, is just getting used to those lessons of failure early on and learning from those lessons and apply them moving forward. But gosh, in terms of, looking back over the years in terms of that, marketing messages, Jim Collin in his book, From Good to Great, tells the story of, when you do anything, test it small before going big. So that's one of the things that we try but it's hard because when you have a new idea, you get so excited. It's just like, I look back, Michael, and I can remember like one of the TV spots that we did years ago. And it was like, gosh, it was just like, you thought at the time you're doing it, you're thinking like, this is really this is going to win an award. And you look back at it now, and it is like the worst looking home movie that you could possibly imagine. Like something that you wouldn't want your friends or family or anyone else to see. There's a lot of them. And the process never stops. I always say the reason you call it the practice is just because everyone's trying to get it right. And there's no finish line. There's lots of lessons there. And I think it's always changing because you always got to, we're always changing things because the things we did 6 years ago or 6 months ago, they're no longer working. So we're constantly changing and updating those processes.
How do you at this point, just with a variety of different ideas that you have, how do you kind of determine between like what's a good idea or a good marketing idea versus something that, never quite makes it to market?
I often say I don't need to decide because I'll just follow the numbers. So so anyway, you do the best you can, you track the results as best you can, and whatever the numbers say, there's things that I've done that I've been excited about that nothing came out of. There were other things that I thought, gosh, this is really something that I'm hoping no one sees, and yet it's something that maybe takes off. But whatever it is, nothing's going to last forever. So I think you always got to be constantly beating on your craft, monitoring your results, and then just following the numbers wherever they take you.
Speaking of people, I know we've talked about that a great deal. How, at this point, do you attract people to the firm? Most every firm owner would say that their biggest challenge is finding great attorneys, great staff. I mean, they're out there, right? So how do you attract them to the firm?
Yeah. Well, that is one of the great challenges that's facing any business in America today is how do you attract quality talent? Because we're at the time we're talking right now, unemployment is at a record low of 3.5% nationally and lower than that in some other places. And so one of the ways that we have done that has been a change of paradigm, a change of mindset. And what we look at now is not so much where the person is, but what they produce. So, as long as we find someone that is producing and adding value, it really doesn't matter to us where they are. And that leads to one of the other great challenges of which is how do you maintain culture when you have a hybrid environment and you've got team members on site and you also have other team members that are working someplace else. We do it in every way we can as far as, posting in every online site that we can find. We do it by offering incentives to our team members and saying, hey, listen, we want to attract more people that are like you, that are positive minded, that are high performers, and, help us attract more people like you. Tell your friends, your family members that if you think they'd be a good fit, and then have them reach out to us. Every way that we can find to answer your question.
And speaking of culture, how would you define the culture of the firm?
Our mission is to make good things happen for other people. And so in terms of doing that, it's, we're trying to make good things happen for our clients. But the most important people to take care of, first of all, are your own people. Take care of your people and you'll have happy people. And then in turn, with their interactions with the clients, they will have a happier, better experience.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I'm curious that through your evolution over the years, I know we talked about what day in the life looked like when you started the firm. What does that look like today?
A day in the life in the firm now, It looks differently than it did before. I'm getting ready to travel next week to our office in Charleston, South Carolina. And in terms of other ways, constantly trying to find ways to better communicate and better keep in contact with our team members. So I'm involved in huddles every day. I do walkthroughs of our on-site headquarters here in Atlanta, as far as just having the touch, as far as having that human contact with people whenever possible. In terms of the playing field, I'd say it's a different playing field where, instead of looking at a geography of the city or the state, we're looking at more kind of a bigger playing field, which is great because it provides more opportunities, but also more challenges as far as organizations and what are the best practices for your team? What are the best practices for your procedures and organizations and maintaining a good client experience?
And Scott, after all these years, you're coming up on like 30 years just with the practice. You could have stopped this a long time ago. What keeps the fire burning? Why keep doing this? And why keep even growing and expanding? What's driving you today?
Well, for me, I like to work, for starters. And so there's no finish line. And so it's like my days still start at 4:30 a.m. each morning. And, I still very much need the weekends to keep up on everything that accumulates during the week. And so it's one of those things that I can intend to practice as long as God and my licensing board will allow me to practice.
I love it. What are some of the things that you do to just remain in peak state, to remain energized? I know we were talking about before, on your website it says you work out 6 days a week, but now it's 7 days a week. What types of things are you doing?
In terms of workouts, I will go through. One of the things about our profession is that, it tends to be a sedimentary profession. So anyway, I'll typically go through, I'll do a workout in the morning and that involves some type of weight workout. In the evening, I'll do some type of workout that involves cardio. And, the key is to, I think, is just to stay active doing something. And, to rest is to rust. And so I just do the best I can as far as maintaining activity. I just think that having constant activity is also just naturally buoys your spirits and keeps you, a positive state of mind and, keeps you going on the right track.
Yeah, I agree. In terms of even maintaining that momentum, it sounds like you're a constant learner. Where do you see the future of the legal profession going?
That's a great question. And just like we've seen just like we've talked as far as the past trends of the legal profession expanding from locality to statewide to regional, in terms of looking ahead to the future, I see that expanding in terms of when you look at how much things have changed. Like, for example, when I graduated law school, there was no uniform bar exam. Now there is. And in terms of just like everything else you see as far as expanding, I see law doing very much the same things. And there's a lot of exciting things going on. And it's like if you're not growing, if you're not expanding, if you're not investing in tomorrow, then you're not moving forward because someone else is doing those things. So I think that's just one of those things that answer your question in terms of where we're going in the future. I just see continued expansion and state boundaries being less and less important.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting. Some people have talked about, we talked a lot about Rule 5.4, non-lawyer firm ownership, but Rule 5.5 I think is also interesting because it's like multi-jurisdictional practice and being able to serve clients wherever they are. Is there anything that keeps you up at night?
I generally sleep pretty good, but in terms of things that keep me up at night or things that there's always things to do. I keep a things to do list for myself every day of things that are on, that are on my mind as far as that. I think it's a lot easier to hit your target, whatever it is, if you know what your target is. So I sleep pretty good, but to answer your question, I've got, my goals and my things that I need to do just for my own responsibility. So they're always there.
How do you define success?
Success can be defined a lot of different ways, but I would answer it this way. Failure is always defined the same way, and that's not reaching your goals.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. So to kind of deviate a little bit, I'll see if I can get this out of you, but obviously your results are not common. You're doing tremendously well. For somebody who's listening to this podcast and said, they may be at a different place with their practice. Maybe they're just starting out, or maybe they've been practicing law for quite a while. They've just never been able to really gain traction. What do you find differentiates the most successful firm owners from perhaps the least?
I think the most important thing is to think outside the box. I think that's the most important thing, is to think outside of the box, find out what are the friction points, how can I address those to better serve the needs of my clients and others on my team. And what can I do that's new and different? And, and also just, having a mentality that is not risk adverse. I was always completely accepting of the possibility of failure. Which is, it's not really failure if you learn the lessons and you can apply those moving forward. But I think just having that and surrounding yourself with people that are going to be a positive influence in your life, that are like-minded, and just having, because we all deal with the same struggles, Michael, the same problems, and learning from others that have successfully overcome those. And then just, any lessons that you've achieved, then passing those on to those that follow.
And as we come to a close, this being the Game Changing Attorney podcast, Scott, what does being a game changer mean to you?
Being a game-changing attorney means to me someone that changes the game, somebody that is thinking outside the box, and somebody that's able to, to see everything as a lesson. You see the advantages in the disadvantage, and someone that leaves a mark by doing things that are going to be new, different, innovative, that are going to provide a better experience for those around them that they serve.
I want to give a huge thank you to Scott Monge for taking the time to speak with us today, and I want to thank you, yes you, for listening to this podcast and for your commitment to learning and growing as a leader. If you found this episode valuable, here are 3 free ways that I can help you grow your law firm. Number 1, download the first chapter of my book absolutely free at GameChangingAttorney.com. Number 2, you can shoot me a text at 404-531-7691 and I'll answer any question that you've got for me. And finally, number 3, if you can leave this podcast a 5-star review, it'll help us gain access to more influential thought leaders and bring their lessons learned here to you. For more information on our interview with Scott Monge, see the show notes for this episode in your podcast app or visit GameChangingAttorney.com.